think if you can create that sense of mission, sense of building something big, that's a fantastic thing you can do as a leader. The diversity is really a treasure in a company that provides a lot of value. We believe the interaction and the culture you create by being together and spending time together is priceless.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast in partnership with Megaverse. More about them later. Now, if you're not subscribing to the show, what is it going to take for me to get you to subscribe to the show? Costs you nothing. You can unsubscribe at any time. But if you do subscribe, we get an opportunity to get more eyeballs on this content, which means we can bring you better and better guests. And surely if you enjoy this content, that's what you want too. So please, if you can subscribe, it would mean the world to me and all of the team here at Unscripted. Today's guest, Tomaso Rodriguez, the CEO of Talabat, the food delivery platform here in the UAE, with over 5,000 employees. A young tech guy who's the head of this fast-growing organization talks about the challenges of leadership, the challenges of keeping employees engaged, and how they go on to be the biggest and the best at what they do. He really cares for his employees, and that's why I had to have him on the show. So let's cue the music and get Tomaso on the show right now. Megaverse, the digital frontier of tomorrow. Megaverse stands at the cutting-edge intersection of technology and imagination. It's a virtual realm where the limitless expanse of the digital universe unfolds, offering users unparalleled experiences and interactions. With its advanced metaverse platform, users can craft unique avatars, forge connections, and even establish their own digital estates. It's more than just virtual reality. Megaverse is an expansive digital civilization teeming with opportunities for both individuals and brands. From immersive concerts to revolutionary retail experiences, Megaverse is redefining the way we engage with the digital world. As we stand on the brink of a new era where the lines between our physical reality and the digital realm blur, Megaverse is poised to lead the charge in this brave new world. Dive in and discover a universe without bounds. This really is the future. Tomaso, thank you so much for coming to join us today on the podcast.
Spencer, thank you for inviting me.
It's interesting, you know, I look at this brand of Talabat, and I've spoken to you before, so our avid listeners would have heard that conversation before. But something that really triggered me into wanting to speak to you again was something that you quite famously did a few months back now, when you decided to get on a motorbike.
Yes.
And get out there and experience, and I thought experience it from a company point of view, but experience what it's like to drive a motorbike on the roads of Dubai.
Absolutely. Maybe let's say I did it for deliveries, right? not just riding on the roads. Yeah.
Now, obviously, Dubai is an unusual place compared to Europe. The roads are a little bit more dangerous, and so the job of being a rider here is definitely much scarier than it would be back home in the UK or in Europe, I would think.
I don't know. Have you ever ridden in Milan?
That's a good yeah.
I mean, when I was living in Italy, I was moving around with motorbike, and it was not easy.
I lived in Milan, but I never had a motorbike. But yeah, that's probably, and Rome as well. That kind of place is crazy too. Yeah. Okay, fair point. So tell me, why did you do it?
Look, I think the most important thing for me was to learn things you cannot learn from dashboards and numbers and speaking to your team, etc. And it was really understanding what happens on the ground, and there were a lot of learnings actually. And like first things first, like for example, when I started the shift, I logged into the shift, put the phone on the holder of the bike, and it died immediately. and it was like, why? Like, because the sun was hitting very, very hard, right? And so like out of that, we started installing these windshields with UV protection so that the phones don't die anymore, right? Because if you think about it, it's very unsafe if the rider cannot put the phone there, they need to keep it in their pocket. Then if they have to look at the road where to go, I mean that's very important. And these kind of things you cannot learn sitting behind the desk.
great valuable lessons for you being literally at the coalface with the people that are out there delivering the food day after day. You took that as an experience, and we see sometimes company bosses go and try something out so that they can go and learn stuff. Did that prompt you to want to spend more time understanding that and make that a frequent thing that you do?
Yes, absolutely. So now I'm doing it every quarter. So I did it 3 times already. Along with that, also I'm doing picking experiences. So going to supermarket as a picker and try the thing. And recently I also went in a restaurant to serve the orders to the riders to see how the process works on that side of things.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. We're going to publish it very soon.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it was very fun.
It's interesting when you think about that. You're getting out there and you're seeing all of these different jobs and how they take place. One thing I always find fascinating about Dubai on a motorbike is, where do you park motorbikes?
That's a fantastic question. There's a lot of unwritten rules, and the riders know all of them. Like, for example, the buildings, you never know if you have to go in the basement parking, if you have to park outside or whatever, if you have to enter from a side door, the main entrance, and all this information is not out there for the riders, and they need to learn like every single building of the city, right? That's why our riders are kind of specialized in zones, right? So that they have that experience. But I mean, for a first day rider, it's very hard to learn all those things.
Incredible. Okay, how many employees have you got in the business?
So we have office employees around 5,000, and we have around 80,000 riders across the region. 80,000, yeah.
80,000 riders?
Yes.
Now, those 80,000 riders, do they work for an external logistics company? Do they work directly for you? How does that work?
So they exactly work for external logistic companies. There are many external logistics companies we work with that ensure all the medical benefits and flights, accommodation, and provide the motorbikes to the rider, etc., etc. And we contract with them.
Now, when we look at a company like Talabat, around the world, maybe that name isn't known, but definitely here in the region, it is widely known. But it's quite a competitive space.
It is.
We think about the other companies that you're up there against with, which we won't mention today. Boo! But this evolution of people, I grew up in a world where you might call the Chinese takeaway and then you'd go and pick it up later on. Nobody would be delivering it unless you ordered a taxi from the minicab office to do it because you really didn't want to leave your home.
Yes.
That was how takeaways worked for me when I was younger.
Yes.
But that was kind of like the Friday night treat.
Yes.
It was the pizza,
absolutely.
It was the Chinese, or whatever it may be, the Saturday night hangover food, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, people are using these types of services for their everyday food.
Yes.
7 days a week.
Yes.
To provide what they need in not a stodgy Indian food or a stodgy Chinese food, but in a healthy food type of way as well.
Yes.
It's interesting how that's changed, isn't it? How we look at shopping for food differently.
Absolutely. And I think maybe I should not say this, but I have stories of a lot of people in Talabat. Like my CFO has 4 kids. And he tells me that they order 7-8 times a day. His whole family orders 7-8 times a day on Talabat, right? Each person orders something different, and they also don't sit together, right? It's everybody is in the room, etc. Yeah. I think the habits, especially among younger generations, are changing a lot, right? If you look at maybe Europe, my mom and my dad didn't order one single food delivery order throughout the whole pandemic, which is crazy, right? Like I think Middle East is a very different place. People love convenience, and I think that's what basically we provide, like very, very good convenience.
I look at these different delivery. I mean, I have food delivered every day, but I have a meal plan. Mm-hmm. But to me, my food comes from a company called Nourishing. They have someone that at 4 a.m. in the morning drops it off at my front door, and then they pick the bag up the next day and bring the next one. So in many respects, doing something very similar, just with a very healthy focus. But when we look at, it's interesting, when we look at different countries, in Italy, for example, it's not often you see people eating food that isn't Italian.
It's true.
You know?
That's very true. That's
So
very true.
you if you go to, I don't know, anyway, you go to Lake Garda, you don't find, Chinese restaurants, Indian restaurants. It's pretty much Italian.
You do, but most people eat Italian. That's true. That's true. Like people here are more adventurous, and maybe because you also have people from all over the world, right? Before Dubai, I was living in Asia. Asia is a bit the same. Actually, in Asia, even before food delivery, no one ever eats at home, like because you have so many cheap options. Just you walk downstairs and there are food courts and everything, right? But the eating at home, I think, is more of a European habit, and in the rest of the world is kind of fading away. I heard legends, I don't know if it's true or not, of like houses in Hong Kong being built without kitchens nowadays. So, but yeah, it seems like the world is going into that direction a bit.
Can you imagine that? Good for you. I get it. It's like, you've got your propaganda. Who wants a kitchen?
Exactly. Why do you need a kitchen?
Can you imagine that if I found out that you partnered with Emaar, Talabat and Emaar, to build this new tower, kitchen free?
Kitchen free. Let's see.
It could go there though, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could.
Wow, that's fascinating to think about. Talk to me about being a young guy running such a big business, all right? Because you're not your typical suit-wearing, middle-aged, old-fashioned, been-around-the-block type of guy, You're a young, fun, dynamic type of individual running a very large organization that's only going from strength to strength. What kind of challenges do you face being that kind of person in that type of role? And how fun is it being a little bit different, maybe?
Well, first of all, thank you for the young. I'm not that young at the end of the day. And actually, I did a couple of podcasts recently, and I was looking like, I look so old now, right? So that's why I'm wearing a T-shirt today instead of a shirt or whatever. But
I've never seen you in a shirt.
No.
Do you wear them?
Very, very rarely.
Okay.
Very rarely. Only for official meetings or stuff like that. But I prefer to be in a T-shirt. And I think we have a very. I think at the end of the day, it's not much about the age, but I think it's about the culture and what do you believe is the right culture for your company, right? And I think at Talabat, the most important thing for us is we say you can be you, right? So you can own your own quirks and everything, right? We don't judge anyone, and we let you be, right? And no matter your age, no matter your sex, your preferences, your religion, your country of origin, like it's in Talabat you can be you. That's how we think about it.
Interesting. Do you remember a company called Zappos?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Tony Hsieh started Zappos over in Las Vegas.
Yes.
And I went to their offices in Vegas to see how their business operated before they sold it to Amazon. And everybody had to work in customer services for the first 3 months. It doesn't matter what your job title was, you worked in customer services to understand the customer first. But then they allowed everyone to design their desk and their work area the way they wanted to. And what they wanted to do is make everything convenient for the employees. So they brought the dry cleaners to them, the car servicing to them, all of that kind of stuff. Take all of these hassles away from the employees so they can focus on being effective at what they do. And I at first when I was watching it was thinking, my brain was a bit scattered. It was a bit kind of like crazy at first because you had, John had his desk there and it, covered in football memorabilia, and then Joan had hers covered in floral arrangements and all this kind of different stuff. And they had a bar, and I'm like, how does anyone get anything done in here?
Yeah.
But clearly it worked because it became a $1 billion business very quickly.
Yeah.
When I see that kind of stuff, to me, that's like a guy saying, I'm going to try something different and see how it works and see how my colleagues enjoy this type of experience. And if it does work, great, and if it doesn't work, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Now, he was a bit extreme because he lived in an Airstream caravan. They collected llamas and stuff like that before his passing. When you look at business now and you compare it to how it used to be, it's so different.
Yes, I think it's a different world. And look, I come from a tech background. Like before Talabat, I always worked in tech companies. I was working Grab in Asia. I worked for Uber for a long time, like from the very beginnings of Uber. And, I think when I joined Talabat, this was not kind of a tech company. The headquarters was still in Kuwait in 2018. And the tech team was sitting in a basement in a building. And it was a 30-people team, and it was called the IT team. Right, and this was a purely commercial company, sales-driven. People had to badge in and badge out. And so it's like you cannot attract the best people with this kind of culture and setup, right? So I think we changed all of that. People sometimes criticize that we have a very beautiful office and headquarters with amenities, etc. But I think that's very important, because when you try to attract really the best people, they want these kind of things. They want their office environment to feel like a home environment, like to feel that, they'd like to stay there and to spend time there. And that's why, for example, we are probably one of the very few companies that have a 5 days a week working from office policy. We don't allow working from home. Right. Yeah, we don't. I know it's very controversial.
No, I think it's brilliant.
But I think our response is more, we want to make the office very nice and like a place where you want to be, because we believe that, the interaction and the culture you create by being together and spending time together is priceless.
That's really interesting. So you've gone against the grain of that kind of evolution to the kind of 4-day week and the people working from home 2 days a week. I mean, I have in one of my businesses, it's like they work in the office 3 days a week, but I'm kind of old school and I'm like, no, everyone should be in together, because I want that sense of camaraderie. I want that place of belonging. I want that environment where, to me, there's value in seeing you at the coffee machine at 8:30 in the morning and talking about the football results.
Yes.
To me, there's value in that. There's connection from that point of view as well.
Absolutely. And you create those personal connections, and actually, we measure, happiness of people. We have this Peakon score. Probably you know about it, and we measure the engagement, right? And you see that engagement goes up if people stay at the office, right? And like if everybody works from home, they never meet each other. They don't feel really committed and engaged to the company somehow. Mm-hmm. It's a company like any other company at the end of the day, right? You cannot really build a strong culture, I think. And the other thing we notice, if you look at the Zoom data, because Zoom gives you data on meetings, etc. If people stay at the office, the number of meetings decrease, because as you said, I meet my friend at the coffee machine, and yes, we talk about the football match, but maybe, hey, I have this issue with this thing, maybe. What do you think? And, that avoids a meeting that otherwise I would have scheduled, right? So I think there's a lot of benefits to that.
That's really interesting. Talk to me about retaining staff and recruiting people here in the UAE. Statistically, 1 in 4 people leave their employer every year here, from top down in terms of roles. It exists everywhere. Yeah. There's obviously a lot of growth taking place here at the moment, so attracting really good talent as a challenge for lots of businesses. How have you found it?
Look, I didn't know the statistics. It's good that you mentioned, because that makes me feel good about our numbers. Our turnover is more around in the 10%, so it's 1 every 10 basically. Look, we at the beginning, I think we were hiring a lot of people from abroad, especially in the engineering and in the product areas. Today, I think there's a big pool already in the UAE and in Dubai, and it's becoming better and better. The quality of talent is increasing a lot. So I feel hiring is becoming easier, maybe these days, and retention. Now that you tell me this number, I'm happy about it.
Talk to me about leadership. When we think about your younger years, who is a really great leader that you worked for, and what was it that was great about him or her?
Look, I learned a lot from from all the CEOs of the companies I worked with. Even though in my first company, I was not working directly with the CEO, but but Uber. Let's say when I was at Uber, I think Travis, who was the CEO and the founder back then, he was a very, very visionary person, right? He was he could really make you feel that you're building something special, something big, that you're changing the world. And I think when you have that kind of feeling, like there's nothing you can't do. I was finding myself working 2 a.m. at night and enjoying it and being happy about it, because I was feeling I'm building something bigger than myself, bigger than anything I could achieve in life, right? So I think if you can create that sense of mission, the sense of building something big, that's a fantastic thing you can do as a leader.
There's a word cult in the word culture.
Yeah.
And I've had guests on the podcast that have come from religious cults, like extreme religious cults, who are fascinating to learn about how they got seduced by that cult. But if you look at Instagram, when they started, they described themselves as a cult, and other businesses as well, where you get that startup company where, you know, the first 10 people are in, they create the culture of that business, and they're all, like you said, working at 2:00 in the morning because they all believe in the mission and the vision. And then they've all got purpose and they're all heading in that direction. But the company kind of slowly gets bigger and bigger, and that cult aspect kind of dissipates a little bit along the way. What do you feel about cults and everyone being part of that kind of stuff? Because to me, it's like a sense of belonging.
It's true. And I think it's I mean, I don't think companies should build cults. I mean, you said I usually say the same exact thing that you're saying. Like, we're building a culture. We're not building a cult, right? So I think that's really spot on. I think it all boils down to what you're actually doing, right? If there's substance in what you're doing. Did you watch We Crash on the yeah, of course, everybody watched that. But I think the idea is, like, if you are in that kind of culture of like fake it until you make it type of Silicon Valley thing, I mean, then you have to build a culture around it, right? Because you don't have a product, you don't have a real substance, and you have to make people believe something that maybe is not there. So at some point you get so into it that you start believing your own lies, right, or something like that. So I think that's the problem of many, you know, tech companies or startup companies, is when, you know, they don't have a real product market fit, and I mean, they're buying top line because they have a lot of money from venture capitalists or whatever, so they're kind of buying revenues, and so the company is growing, it seems to be growing, and everybody's excited, everybody's happy, like, and no one sees that it could at some point stop growing, but there's no substance, and then you have to create a reason for people to believe in it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when you create, then it becomes a bit of a cult. That's a bit how I see it.
When you look at a HR or a human capital department, and then you compare that to the finance department, there's always tends to be an element of resistance. Mm-hmm. The HR department come up with great ideas about what they think could help improve engagement, can help improve performance, and the finance department are like, what are we spending money on here? Yeah. Okay, and resist a little bit. And to me, maybe they, in lots of companies, they don't work hand in hand as much as they could, because if you give a finance department an argument to spend, I don't know, a million dirhams because it can prove that they're going to produce 2 million dirhams on the back of it, then the finance department is generally, and this is quite binary, generally quite happy. Yeah. And the HR department or the human capital department don't always get that aspect right. Have you experienced that?
I think maybe it's a bit of the opposite of our company. It's maybe it's a bit weird, but I think my CFO, I have a CFO that's like super pro business, right? And he believes a lot into investing into people, and whenever we have compensation discussions, I think like he's the one pushing for usually more than whatever comes from as average discussion from HR, etc. So I think they work very well together because they both want to make life of our people better. I am more of, I like to make sure that the very good people are rewarded, right? I think there's a component of like you have to reward fairly people, but there's also a component that the ones who are really the stars of your team need to be exceptionally rewarded, right? So I don't think every company should treat everybody the same. I think if there are people that are pushing much harder and putting much more commitment and effort, they should be rewarded for that.
It's interesting that you say that, because if you take Jack Welch's book when he was the boss of GE, called Winning, he wrote about how you break down that workforce into 3 groups. The top 10% were one, the top 20% were one, the middle 60% were another, and the bottom 20% were another. And he said the top 20% get treated differently. Mm-hmm. They get treated, it's one-to-one relationships with the CEO and the chairman because they're the top performers in the business. Yes. The bottom 20% are probably the people that this is the wrong environment for them.
Yeah.
You know, they should be encouraged or helped to find work or a career doing something that would satisfy them more.
Yep.
And the middle 60%, trying to work out, you train them and you work with them as a group, but you find the ones that potentially are going to be the stars of the future within that group. And so they're either going to move up or they're going to move down. And that's how he would identify it. And the brave thing is saying the bottom 20%, you know, should probably move on. And often in companies, we keep people, don't we? We keep people longer than maybe we should.
To some extent it's true, but we really try to push that, right? And doesn't mean that people have to get out. So, for example, out of 1/3 of all the roles we have open at Talabat are filled within internal position. So we have a lot of so we have a lot of people that move around actually, and I completely agree with you. Like most of the times, it's not a person that is not the right person, but it's just the fit, right? And it's about you have to do what you love, what you like to do, and what your skill sets allow you to do, right? And when you find that match, I think that's the perfect job somehow. And I always tell everybody, like, if you're not happy when you're coming to work every day, then you should change job. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? So it could be within the company or outside the company. But if you don't have that feeling coming to office every day, then this is not the right fit for you.
Lots of companies have spent time over the years looking at wellness and trying to understand that and come up with various wellness initiatives that they've done, whether that be fitness challenges, food challenges, this kind of stuff along the way. And there's evidence out there to say that these don't work very well. A lot of the time, the problems are because some of the leadership isn't as good as it could be, and people need to work for good leaders. And sometimes people just don't know where they're going. And if you sat down with people and said, right, what's your ambition? What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to be? And you could help them achieve what they wanted to. Then the buy-in is much stronger from that employee. Yeah. Often you'll be, I don't know, wherever you may be talking to somebody, it's like you're the head of a department. Okay, so what's the next step for you? Until the old man retires, there's not a next step. Well, when's the old man going to retire? Not 10, 15 years probably. Yeah. It's that I'm now limited, and so the enthusiasm and the passion kind of wanes from people, even in senior roles. Yeah. Giving employees the opportunity to feel like the company cares about their future and cares about helping them get to where they want to get, with both parties involved in the efforts required. Yeah. Is that something that Talabat spend time looking at? Yeah, a lot. And where to start? So I think, as I was telling you, a lot of the positions are filled internally, and we promote mobility a lot. And then what I always tend to say to my teams is, like, you have to take your career by the horn, right? And the way I think I was most successful in my career in the past was to kind of get a bit out of the comfort zone and go where my company needed me the most, right? When I was at Uber, I was in Europe. I was in charge of Italy and Greece for the ride-sharing business. But then there was this fire that was coming up. They wanted to launch this new business called Uber Eats, and there was no one that would go to Asia and do it and whatever. And so this is what the company needed the most. And so I took the opportunity. Did I want to go out all the way and move? Probably not, right? I think the same, and that was a lateral move, was not a promotion, was just, move same level, but go where I can make more impact for the company, right? And I think that's a bit of the approach. We have positions, everybody wants to work and live in Dubai. We have positions all over the region, like whether it's Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, or Jordan, or Egypt, and whatever. I think, and usually we have always open leadership positions in these countries, right? And I think getting a bit out of your comfort zone could also mean, I move from Dubai to one of these places, right? Another thing we do is a yearly conference that we call the TLC, the Talabat Learning Conference. It's a one day where we block out everybody's calendar, and we have special guests from outside that come and tell us about their business, how is evolving in the future, all related to food and grocery tech usually.
but we try to kind of understand what's going on in the next 3, 4, 5 years, and I try to, make everyone think how can they, develop and improve the way you're working to achieve those kind of futuristic goals and so on. And then we have another program that is called Elevate, where we take the leaders of the company that we believe have very high potential to become like upper management or C-levels, and we try to foster them into that by providing executive education, like from business schools, plus internal programs that we developed for that. These are some examples. We have like a lot of other things that we're doing, but growth opportunities is the maybe one most important thing we focus on at Talabat.
It's common sense, isn't it? If you can take people from within the organization that already buy into the brand and are loyal to the brand and understand the culture, and give them the tools they need so that they can progress up that company. So that external and internal training, you're essentially investing in those guys yourselves.
Totally. Look, I was doing this mental math the other day, and I was like, okay, MD, managing director of a country, lasts on average maybe 3 years. Or something like that, because it's a very tiring job. Like it takes a big toll on you. Like work very long hours, a lot of responsibility, and there's people who like it, who love it. Like partners are consulting firms that can do it for 20 years, right? Like here, also MDs that can do it for a long time. But on average, it lasts for like 3 years. If you take someone external, maybe it takes 6 months to find someone. It takes 6 months to teach the job. And then maybe after 1 year, they start getting it right. And then you only have 1.5 years span of utility, right? So it's much better if you find someone internally and you can groom that person that knows the business, knows the ropes into developing into that position. The company will benefit from not having a whole of 2 years of absence of leadership in that role, right?
How do you cope with the different nationalities and cultures that we have in our melting pot of being here in Dubai, and finding the ways to get them all aligned to achieve the greater good for the business? You see many companies where they'll have Indians or Filipinos that are paid considerably less than somebody from the West in exactly the same role. You'll see often you'll go to, I speak at lots of events or company events, and I'll see there'll be the Indians sat here, there'll be the Filipinos all sat here, there'll be the Russians over here and the Westerners over here, kind of like everyone's segregated and separated. How do you manage that within your business?
I have to say this doesn't happen at Talabat. We have 85 different nationalities in the company, and pay is based entirely on your job profile and grade in the company, etc. We don't pay by nationality, that's for sure. The way I think about it, and also when I think about my team, my direct reports, like they come, each one of them probably is different nationality from all over the world, from Asia, Europe, Middle East, etc. Look, if you hire people that are the same as you, it's very fast to hire, because like you get connected immediately. And oh, these guys think like me, like it must be good, right? Because I'm good, then he's good, right? So exactly. So you hire very fast, and stuff get done very quickly, and you're like, oh shit, like it's happening, right? I just tell this guy to do something, and it happens the next day, right? But then you can just get from here to here, right? And you cannot get here, right? Because you don't have that diversity of opinion that comes to the table. If you hire very different people than you, it will be a mess at the beginning. Everybody hating each other. People will not get along together. It will be hard to push any single initiative because everyone will have their opinion and their whatever. So you're like, why am I doing this? This is a big mess. It's never going to work. But after a while, if you manage to get that group working together, you have like an endless flow of ideas and opportunities that you would never have had if you had hired only people like you, right? And I think the diversity is really a treasure in a company that provides a lot of value.
And do you find that leaders from lots of different backgrounds, if they're trained in the right way, are effective at leading anyone and everyone?
Yeah, I would say we have leaders of any nationality in the company.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I've been here for 19 years, and I remember years and years ago when I was first here, these two guys in dish dashes walked into my office, into reception, said, you need to spend 5,000 dirhams and advertise in the Chamber of Commerce book. You need to put a one-page ad in. I didn't know who they were, but I'd only been here like 3 months, and I was like, oh, they're officials. And I was immediately in that moment like terrified. I'm like, okay, no problem at all. I'll pay for the advert. Well, that happened the first time, and the second time I'm like, the third year that happened, I'm like, are you guys actually Emiratis, and who are you representing here? And they weren't. They were two Pakistani guys. I'm like, okay. So I was almost like in fear of the uniform almost before.
Yes. This happens to me all the time. Like I have these guys calling me saying, "Oh, we have this event is sponsored by His Highness the Sheikh, whatever, right?"
Yeah.
But then if you dig, you discover it's not true at all, right? But yeah, it happens. It happens.
But then we see often that I remember years and years ago. So 2005 I got here. So 2006, my company did a deal with Barclays Bank. And it was to provide, this was financial services, to provide all of the life insurance because Barclays had just introduced mortgages. Mm-hmm. So Barclays, British Bank, we're a British business, guess what? Wonderful. Within 12 months, Barclays had become not British anymore, okay? It had become Indian and Pakistani. And I was literally watching in front of my eyes the culture change, okay? And it was a real experience for me, watching how people, behaved, how they worked, their level of commitment to some things and lack of commitment to others. And it was a real kind of like experience to the point where I wasn't smart enough back then or intelligent enough, whatever you want to call it, experienced enough to be able to make that work. You know, and I just had to put my hands up in the air and say, guys, this doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. Now, the truth is, it could have worked. I just didn't know how to do it, and I didn't have enough good leadership around me at that time to help me learn and understand that. You know, that cultural difference was really big. Have you experienced stuff like that in your time?
Look, I think it happens when you have one group of very homogeneous group of people, right? And I mean, this could happen with the Indians, could happen with the British, could happen with Italians, with Italians even more probably.
Definitely.
So I think it's just the point of when you can create a true company culture is when you have that diversity, right? Because it's not dominated by one, culture or another, and maybe it's true. So I was fortunate enough not to experience that, because already when I joined Talabat it was quite diverse. So I think it's just really a matter of creating that diversity.
But you went to Asia. Did you have a leadership position in Asia?
Yeah.
Okay, so how was it different? Where in Asia were you?
Yeah, I was in all over Asia, but based in Singapore. But
traveling throughout that part, Southeast Asia. Yeah. So how was it different there to how it is here in the UAE?
Many differences. I think working culture is, no matter what you're doing, you have to spend at least 10 hours a day at the office, or 12 hours. Like, you have to show that you're working hard. Like, whether you're working or not, that's a different topic. But I think it also depends, throughout Asia, different countries, different ways of doing. Indonesia was a tough company, a tough market to manage. Like, it was like culturally very different from the rest, I would say. And talent also very hard to find in places like Indonesia. So usually in Southeast Asia you have a very strong team based in Singapore that supports a lot, local teams throughout the region. And it's a bit this hub and spoke type of approach. Well, I don't feel we have that in Talabat that much, because I think our local teams are very strong. And yes, we have regional teams that always supporting, but the talent density in the countries here, I think, is better. It's much better. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about being a CEO. Lots of people, when they're young, they have an ambition to be a CEO or a managing director or a president, or
Don't do it.
I won't ask the question. You already answered it. It's for many people an ambition. But the reality is, for many people, when they get there, it's not what they imagined it would be. It could be quite lonely. Who's giving you a pat on the back? Who's saying well done to you? Who's making you feel good about the decisions that you make? What's it been like for you?
Did you read the Hard Thing About Hard Things?
Hard Thing About Hard Things, no.
It's a fantastic book from Ben Horowitz, and it speaks about like the challenges he faced, like when he started his own company. From like he went to, the moon and the stars, and then he almost bankrupted for like 2-3 times, and then at some point he managed to IPO miraculously the company and make a lot of money out of it. But he talks about all the struggles he had as a CEO. And that's a fantastic book for anyone who wants to be a CEO. I highly recommend to read that book. And there's a thing that he says in that book, when you become a CEO for the first time, you're usually a straight A student, right? You're used to, be doing very well throughout your life, and so you get to that position. But then when you start looking at the company and the results and the things you're driving, you feel this is not a straight A's result, right? And you constantly look at the company and there's something broken everywhere. Like things are not working, things are not going the way you want them to go, and stuff like that. And when you become a good CEO is the moment that you accept that this is always going to happen. No matter how hard you try to fix everything, nothing is always going to be smooth because something else is going to come up. You fix something else is going to come up. And so the thing you have to do is like really to focus the organization and doing the right things, and hiring the best people to take care of the problems, right? But there's always going to be problems. So you cannot go in with the mindset of, I can solve everything.
So how then do you cope with stress?
I think since I was very young, I was not a person that gets stressed very easily. And I think you have to have a bit of that. Otherwise, every single day there's an emergency. Every single day there's something coming. Regulation that changing market A that can wipe out your business tomorrow, that's always happening. So I think you have to be rational and understand these things happen and do the best you can to fix it, right? There are things you can control and things you cannot control. You cannot let things you cannot control stress you out.
It makes a lot of sense what you say. When you think about stress, it impacts everyone in their job function. You can take someone in charge of another department. They have the stresses of what goes on within their business department as well. And if they take their role really seriously, then they'll be dealing with those. And maybe at interview stage, it should be one of the most important questions should be, how do you handle stress? And can you give us examples of stress? because people do get stressed.
Yes.
They not only get stressed with the roles and responsibilities they have at work, then they've got the stress of what goes on at home as well, and that could be interpersonal relationships. Finance is definitely something that seems to be an issue for people dealing with their personal financial issues. When I consider stress within a business, I find that most companies don't pay any attention to that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time it's because you've got this charismatic leader that does actually what you do. Stress is something, it's almost like part of the job. You embrace it rather than get frightened by it or bothered by it. And so you can cope with it. Yeah. And so it isn't a big deal for you. So then the assumption is it's not a big deal for others. Do you have people in your organization coming to you that's super stressed about things?
Yeah.
And you can't understand why they're so stressed, or you have to put a lot of time into helping them understand the situation differently?
No, I have a few, and I try, and I understand them because, and I think the stress and the panic is a bit of a something that sparks other reactions, right? Because if you see someone that panics for something, other people starts to get anxious, right? And so you want to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So there are a few people that are in my organization that I work with, and I try to also help them and coach them on not overreacting to things, right? And most of the times is you hear a piece of information or you see something, and you're like, oh, is a disaster, a catastrophe, right? But most of the times when you really dig into a topic or things and you really look at the numbers, really look, is this really happening? Is this like how, you're picturing it? Like you figure out that things are much better than what you think, right? And I don't remember who taught me this thing at some point, that if you're stressed about something, if you're very negative about something, what you should do is just write down what's the worst possible scenario that can happen, right? And then write down what's the best possible scenario that can happen, right? And when you read those, then you realize that something that will happen is probably somewhere in the middle. It's very hard that it will be the worst case scenario. And that middle scenario is not that bad, right? So that's a useful exercise for me from time to time. Yeah.
Really good exercise.
Yeah.
Do you think that people should invest and leaders should invest in coaching and or mentoring, or do you think they should find that within their organization?
We do it. So for my direct team, we have coaching. We have a coach, and we try to meet every quarter and have a coaching session, and that's very useful. It's not about specific skills, but it's more kind of how do we talk better to each other, like skillful communication and things like that. Because as I was saying, my team is very diverse, and you have different personalities and people that want to drive different things. And how do we embrace each other's opinions and points of view, and how do we understand better each other? I think that's a work we do. And then we do specific coaching on specific individuals if we believe there's some areas that they need to develop. But other than that, we don't do kind of a wider coaching sessions. I think coaching is more effective when it's small group or one-to-one.
Yeah. Do you think if one of your employees in a leadership role came to you and said, look, I have a coach, a mentor that I work with, well, coach or mentor, whatever, every 2 weeks we meet, and I'm using him to develop myself so that I can become better as a professional and because I want to succeed in the company, will you look at that positively? Or
very positively. Yeah. Why would I look at it negatively?
Because I've experienced some people saying, why are you using an external coach? They don't understand the business. They don't understand.
But usually coach is not about business, right? It's more about your personal and interpersonal skills, right? And how do you become a more effective leader or person? Actually, most of the coaching I did helped me more maybe my relationship with my girlfriend than with my team, right? And so I think it helps you become a better person overall.
Dubai has grown exponentially over the last recent years. We all know this, and it's marketed itself really well. But there's one thing that keeps coming up over and over again, and that's how people are treated, how low or blue collar workers are treated, the type of relationship they have with their employer, whether they're working on a construction site, whether they're motorcycle riders, and that accusation, as I always say, there's no smoke without fire. What do you believe of this, honestly believe of this? When you first came to the region, did you expect there to be this type of propaganda, I would argue to some degree, or information out there that was talking negatively about how people were treated? And have you found that yourself? And if you did, what did you do to change it?
This is a very, very deep question. And look, I cannot talk for other sectors because I just don't know enough, right? Other than what I read or what every one of us read, right? I can talk to food delivery, right? And look, I believe that in the last 2-3 years there've been like massive improvements in the on many fronts, right? But the most important one maybe is like safety, right? And safety has been something that is very dear to us. We've been focusing a lot on. Like, for example, we're the first ones to introduce like all the protective gears and, making sure that the riders were, physically safe, on the road. We recently introduced telematics, right? Which is basically on the rider app, you will have all sort of measurements of like how fast the rider is accelerating or decelerating, or how much is it bending, or like kind of measuring this and coming up with a safety score at the end of the shift that says, okay, you did well, you didn't do well, etc. And ultimately, we use this data and these numbers to influence also the rider pay. Like riders that drive very safe, like they get extra on their payout, right? So so this is like to make sure that they stay safe at the end of the day, right? Heat is another topic, right? And I think in summer it's very hot. And when I did my first motorbike ride, I did it in I think July, right? So it was very, very hot. But we started doing a lot of things like these air-conditioned buses along the cities where riders can go and have a break, drink some water, cool down, etc. We have these cooling vests that you can put in the water, and then they start releasing, for 10 hours a bit of water throughout the day. So they keep you cool, and so on and so forth, right? So I think safety is the most important thing for us when it comes to rider well-being, and then we'll develop things like medical insurance that was added, and flight tickets and this kind of stuff, like to make sure that all the most important conditions are met, right? So I would say today we did enormous improvements in the riders' well-being and safety. Are we done? Not. We wanna continuously improve, but it's a very important topic to us.
And I suppose one step in that direction you're taking is by going out and experiencing it yourself and seeing exactly what it's like, so that you can learn how you deal with these issues.
Absolutely.
If you drive around the back of our cos, you'll see many labour camps out there, and far afield as well. And so the worry is always what everybody is thinking about how people are treated. Now, when I was first here many years ago, people's passports were taken from them, and they weren't given back. And thankfully, that type of stuff has changed. So we just hope that continues to move in the right direction.
And look, we have, even though we don't hire the riders directly and we hire them through 3PL companies, like the riders know our management, right? They know, the teams that deal with the 3PL companies. And if there's any wrongdoing, they never hesitate to reach out to us, right? And then we looked into it, and we fix things if they're not working. For example, the riders get the pay from the 3PL companies, right? But we know exactly how much a rider should get based on like how many shifts they worked and so on and so forth. So we do checks where we call the riders directly and we ask them, how much do you get this month? So we do quality checks to make sure that that happens, right? So we try also to a bit, I don't want to say police, but make sure that these things are done in the proper way. We have Talabat patrollers around the cities. These are riders that got promoted into this position that are available to other riders on the street to help them in case they need anything, and also to check that they're wearing all the safety gears and equipment that they're supposed to be wearing.
They're essentially your front line, your brand as they go out
Absolutely.
there. They really are, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's the most important thing. And like when I talk about the company culture, like of course it involves the riders as well. If the riders feel they're treated fairly and they're happy, I think they will provide a good impression to the customers as well, and they will show they're happy to the customers as well. I think when we rolled out tipping, for example, that was very well taken by the riders. People started tipping. People are tipping much more today than they were tipping like 3 years ago, and the way it's happening is because we built some specific product features to kind of prompt and to show the customers the tipping better, right?
People ask, do they get the money?
100%.
So is it pooled together, or is each individual?
No. To the specific rider you tipped, actually they see in their wallet that they received the tip. One of the other learnings I had when I was riding was that people were tipping me, but I couldn't see it. I would see it at the end of the trip after I delivered the food. And that's why I was not thanking the customer for the tip, right? But then we changed that and we put now riders see the tip, beforehand. So now if you tip a rider will know, right, when they come.
Small difference, big outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's what I learned on the ride as well, right? That it made no sense.
But that makes sense for you as a business, though, because if that rider then is enthused and he says thank you so much for the tip to the customer then feels a sense of engagement, and then they reorder again at another time.
Exactly.
Okay, good, like it. In the age of remote work, do you think that companies should have access to monitoring tools to track employees' productivity? And how would you balance that with employee privacy?
Which CEO will ever answer yes to this question?
I've got Mohammed Alabar coming on next week.
No, we shouldn't. And we also have turnstile in the office for safety reasons, for example. And I always tell my team, I don't want to monitor the data. I don't want to know. I don't care. Like I don't care about FaceTime. I just care that people like to be at the office, and if they like to be at the office, you don't have to force them to come and do it, right? So no. The answer is no.
So how does your company handle controversial issues related to freedom of speech and expression, both internally amongst employees and externally in the products and services you offer?
Can you explain controversial issues, for example?
Oh, you're throwing it back to me. Well, there's controversial issues around in terms of freedom of speech. We're dealing with one right now, aren't we? We're dealing with what's happening here in the Middle East with Yemen and Gaza and Iran. A controversial issue is do you remember when GITEX was on? Mm-hmm. Every year, I'm part of an American men's networking group from LA, and a bunch of them were coming over for GITEX, and they contacted me for an emergency Zoom. And I'm like, okay, what do you need? Well, guys, what do you need? Spencer, is it safe? I'm like, is what safe? They're like, is Dubai safe? Yeah. Israel and Palestine are at war. And I'm like, it's a 3-hour flight away. Of course it's safe. Yeah, but we need to be sure. Yeah. And so that's a controversial issue, isn't it? We look at what's happening right now, and the Arab world, the general public are up in arms, rightfully so, but we don't see, openly the leaders of Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries, saying, hold on a minute, we need to get involved here. Yeah. So that would be an example of a controversial issue, I suppose, wouldn't it?
No, I agree. Yes. Look, it's so what happened. What we see every day is like really tragic, and it's terrible. We are a company, like we're not a political institution, but we thought like that we had to do something and that we had to stand for something, right? And we actually donated some money ourselves for social reliefs in Gaza, right? We donated 500,000 euros as a company, but then we allowed also we allowed customers to make donations, right? And the amount of donations we received was incredible, right? Like people donated more than $2 million for the cause, right? So
through Talabat.
So
that's amazing.
So they use the Talabat as a platform to donate, right? So I think it's very important issue that like a lot of people feel right now, and they are trying to find ways to kind of express themselves. And so I think what we did, I think, is providing a bit of a platform for helping however we can, right?
So you don't shy away from it. You don't tell the team and the business to stand back and stay completely neutral. You stand up for something that you believe in.
Yeah, I mean, we believe in that. We stood up. I agree, and yeah.
Okay, in a rapid, I'll come on to something a little bit probably easier. Okay, in a rapidly changing business landscape, do you believe that traditional hierarchical leadership structures are still effective? I know the answer to this. Okay, or is there a need for a more decentralized, flexible approach?
Decentralized, flexible approach. How would you define that?
Well, I suppose traditionally it would be the man at the top of the business that would sit in the big office, that would bark his orders and instructions at everybody else, and that's how you used to watch it in the movies and stuff like that. If you go back 30, 40 years, and then looking at it, I'm working with a company at the moment, and there's 4 guys that own the business. And they're all the CEO.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And I'm like, okay, fine, you're the CEO. And I'm like, why are you all the CEO? It's like, well, and it's actually ego.
Yes. Of course.
There's nothing else, just ego. I said, why don't you just take CEO off each of your titles? Okay, and 4 of you are just team members or business owners or something. And then have specific roles for each of you to do, so there's no overlap. Okay, and have a once a week, once a month, whatever it is, meeting just to go through that, okay, to make sure everyone's aligned.
And who calls the shots at the end?
But this is they say, but who makes the final decision? I want to make the final decision. I want to make the final decision. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I understand where you're coming from, but you make the final decision in marketing. You make the final decision in finance. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, you all own the company, 25% each. Yeah. But in most businesses, that's not the case. You've got shareholders to report to. In most businesses, whether there's an IPO or not, there's shareholders to report to. And you, in your role, have got to make sure that, well, whether you like it or not, the buck stops with you, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, but at the end of the day, look, there's also this concept of peacetime, wartime CEO. So it depends a lot on the moment you're in, right? But I think I try to be a person that brings consensus whenever we take decisions, right? But if that's not possible, I also know that I have to, do it, right? And take a decision from time to time, right? At the end of the day, I think if you hire very brilliant people, if you hire very good people, you cannot tell them what to do every single day, right? Otherwise, they will leave. And then you can hire a person that's not as good and tell them exactly what to do every single day, and they will do it. But you cannot get the best possible talent if that's your approach. One thing we do a lot at Talabat, and we spend a lot of time on, is OKRs. So setting the right objectives for the company. It's such a long process at Talabat that we do it every half year, not quarterly like many other companies do. But it takes us more than 2 months to do that.
Wow.
Because we have company OKRs, then we have these kind of subcommittees of OKRs, then we have functional OKRs, product OKRs, country OKRs. And there's a team that works for 2 months and a half to just make sure all these OKRs talk to each other. And everybody is absolutely going in the same exact direction. Mm-hmm. If you have that in place, I think you don't have to bark much, right? But I think if from the top, there is no clarity on what should be the objectives, what should be the OKRs, and like every month you change direction and you say, okay, we do this, then something happens and now we do that and whatever, that makes you like that. Then you have to bark, right? And
well, you're inconsistent, and people don't know where they stand as well when that kind of stuff happens. And
I worked in companies where people were saying, "Oh, we keep changing direction. Oh, it's not." And then also people start using it as an excuse to not deliver, right? So I think it starts from the leadership. If you show that clarity, that you have that clarity, everybody has the clarity. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but that's what I really, strive for. That's when things get much easier.
Last question, meetings.
Yeah.
So team meetings, board meetings, stuff like that. Do you have any feelings around how long these types of things should last?
A meeting lasts as long as a slot you put in the calendar. That's what people say, right? So even if it's a 10-minute meeting, if you put 1 hour, it will last 1 hour, right? Why? Because people prepare presentations and documents based on the length of the meeting you set, right? So I think what is important is you're clear on what you want to learn on the meetings. And I'm guilty sometimes of just saying I want to have a meeting on the topic, but I don't say what I want to know about the topic, right? And I think it's as a leader, it's important that you say, okay, exactly this is what I want to learn, right? And this is what we should focus on. And then it can be very short. It can be if it's to the point. And sometimes I tell the team, don't come with 50 slides, maximum 3 for this meeting, right? And we and we make a decision on the spot, right?
Lastly, we have asked people that work for Talabat about you.
Really? Okay.
Why did your body language change all of a sudden?
Now you're going to call out all my bullshit.
And what you've said for the last hour is wrong. But we imagine that. And there is a consensus that you're a great leader.
Thank you.
From the people that give me feedback. And so I want to say thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom on the show. It's really valuable to the audience listening. And I wish you continued success with what you've got, which is a fantastic company and a brand that everyone really enjoys here in the UAE.
Thanks so much. This is so flattering coming from you. Thank you, Spencer.